What we're seeing right now around the New England Patriots doesn't match the narrative that's being pushed out there. And if you've been paying attention to everything that actually happened over the past season and into this offseason, you already know something feels off about the idea that this team is about to regress in 2026. Because the reality is very different, and it starts with something simple but incredibly powerful. This team is essentially running it back after a Super Bowl appearance. That alone should change the entire conversation. We're not talking about a roster that got gutted, or a locker room that lost its identity. In fact, the Patriots lost only a handful of players, and none of them were core starters who defined what this team was last season. The structure remains intact, the chemistry remains intact, and most importantly, the mentality remains intact. That matters more than people realize, especially in a league where continuity is often the difference between contenders and teams that fall apart under pressure. And when you go back and really analyze what carried this team through the playoffs, it becomes even clearer why there's real reason for optimism. This defense didn't just play well, it dominated. It controlled the line of scrimmage in a way that made opponents uncomfortable from the first snap. There was a physical edge to it, a tone-setting aggression that showed up in every single game. Teams weren't just being stopped, they were being overwhelmed. Statistically, this unit was already elite during the regular season, finishing inside the top 10 across the board. They allowed just 284 total yards per game, ranked among the best in pass defense, and were absolutely suffocating against the run. But what really stands out is how they elevated their performance when it mattered most. In the playoffs, this defense reached another level entirely, allowing just 26 total points across multiple games while generating relentless pressure and stacking up sacks at a rate no other team could match. And here's the key detail: that entire identity is coming back. The core of the defensive front is still there, the linebackers remain unchanged, and the system that made them so effective is still in place. There's even been reinforcement in certain areas, which suggests this might not just be a repeat performance. It could be an improvement. The expectation of another top-tier defensive season isn't just optimistic thinking. It's grounded in what this group has already proven it can do. Then you look at the roster turnover, or more accurately, the lack of it. The departures don't carry the kind of weight that would shift the trajectory of the team. These weren't foundational pieces. And in response, the front office didn't just fill gaps, they upgraded. At multiple positions, the replacements either match or exceed what was lost, whether it's along the defensive front, in the secondary, or on offense. That brings us to one of the biggest issues from last season, and arguably the deciding factor in the Super Bowl loss: the offensive line. There's no need to sugarcoat it, the protection broke down at the worst possible moment. It wasn't consistent enough, and it directly impacted the offense's ability to execute under pressure. But this is where the offseason adjustments become critical, because changes were made with a clear objective in mind: fix the protection and stabilize the unit. There's been a restructuring of roles, a key addition through free agency, and perhaps most importantly, a belief that internal development will make a significant difference. Players who struggled are now in better positions to succeed, and others are expected to take a step forward with more experience, and in some cases, better health. That last part cannot be overlooked, especially when you consider how injuries impacted performance late in the season. Because when you connect all of this back to the offense as a whole, everything revolves around one central figure: the quarterback. Protect him, and this offense functions at a completely different level. Fail to protect him, and the entire system starts to crack. We saw both versions last season, and the contrast was undeniable. So now the question becomes very simple, and it's the one that could define the entire 2026 season. If the Patriots have truly fixed their biggest weakness and kept everything else intact, are we actually looking at a team that's about to take a step forward instead of backward? What do you think? Are they being underestimated right now, or is there still something people are missing about this roster? Because once you isolate that question and really follow it through, everything keeps pointing back to one name that completely changes the ceiling of this team, and that is Drake Maye. What he did last season, especially considering where he is in his career, is something that shouldn't just be brushed aside or minimized. In his second year, over a full 17-game stretch, he didn't just look good, he operated at a level that puts him right at the top tier of quarterbacks in the league. We're talking about a player who completed 72% of his passes, threw for over 4,400 yards, nearly reached the 31 touchdown mark, and limited mistakes with only 8 interceptions. That alone is elite production, but when you go go deeper into the efficiency metrics, it becomes even more impressive. His quarterback rating led the league, his decision-making was sharp, and his ability to extend plays added another dimension that defenses struggled to contain. This wasn't a flash or a hot streak, this was sustained high-level performance across an entire season, and what makes it even more significant is the timing. He's entering his third year now, which is traditionally when quarterbacks begin to fully settle into their role, understand defenses at a deeper level, and take command of the offense. If what we saw last year is considered his baseline, then the idea that he could still improve should be concerning for the rest of the AFC. Because now you're pairing that growth with better protection, a more stable offensive line, and additional weapons around him. That combination changes everything. It's no longer about potential, it's about escalation. The Patriots are not trying to figure out if they have their quarterback, they already know they do. Now it's about maximizing everything around him so that his impact translates directly into wins, especially in the games that matter most. And when you zoom out and look at how this team is being viewed externally, even the betting markets seem a little unsure about how to handle them. The Buffalo Bills are still positioned as slight favorites, largely because of the proven presence of Josh Allen, but the gap between the two teams is not what you would expect if one of them was truly in a position to regress. The Patriots are right there, almost evenly matched in terms of expectations, which tells you that there's a level of respect for what this roster brings into the season. The projected win total also reflects that hesitation. Sitting around 9.5 wins, it almost feels conservative when you consider what this team accomplished last year and how little they've lost. If the defense performs at the same level, if the offensive line stabilizes, and if Drake Maye continues on his current trajectory, surpassing that number doesn't just seem possible, it feels likely. And that's where the conversation becomes really interesting, because now it's no longer just about being competitive. This is about positioning. This is about whether the Patriots can take control of the AFC East again, whether they can challenge the Bills head on, and whether they can put themselves back in a position to make another deep playoff run. Everything is aligned for that to happen. The continuity, the improvements, the quarterback play, it's all there. The only thing left is execution when the season begins. Because if you really sit with that idea for a moment, it starts to feel less like hype and more like a very real possibility that's building quietly while everyone else is focused somewhere else. The Patriots are not chasing relevance right now. They already proved they belong. What they're doing is refining the details that kept them from finishing the job, and that's a completely different position to be in compared to most teams in the league. Think about how rare it is to come off a Super Bowl appearance and not deal with major losses. No locker room drama, no coaching overhaul, no identity crisis. Instead, what you have is a team that understands exactly what it is. A defense that plays fast, physical, and disciplined football. An offense led by a young quarterback who has already shown he can carry the load when everything around him is functioning properly. And a front office that didn't panic, didn't overcorrect, but instead made targeted moves to strengthen the weak spots. That kind of stability creates something dangerous, especially over the course of a long season, because while other teams are trying to build chemistry on the fly, the Patriots are going to walk into week 1 already knowing how they operate, already trusting the system, already confident in their roles. That edge doesn't always show up on paper, but it shows up in close games, in critical moments, and in the consistency required to stack wins over time. And let's go back to the defensive side for a second, because this is where the tone of the entire team is set. When you have a unit that can dominate the line of scrimmage the way this group did, it changes how opponents prepare. It forces offenses to become one-dimensional, it creates pressure situations on third down, and it allows the rest of the team to play with a level of confidence that feeds into every phase of the game. If that unit performs at a top 10 level again, or even improves slightly, you're looking at one of the most complete teams in the conference. Now combine that with an offense that doesn't need to be perfect, just efficient and protected. That's the key difference moving forward. Last season, when protection broke down, everything became rushed, timing was off, and even a quarterback playing at an elite level couldn't fully overcome it. But if that issue has truly been addressed, if the offensive line can hold up consistently, then you're unlocking the full version of this offense, and that's where things could start to separate, because at that point, you're not just relying on defense to carry you or on your quarterback to make something out of nothing. You're playing balanced football, you're controlling games, you're dictating tempo instead of reacting to it, and those are the teams that don't just make the playoffs, they make deep runs. The schedule, at least on paper, also seems to lean in their favor, especially at home. That's another factor that can't be ignored when you're projecting win totals. If they take care of business in those games, build momentum early, and avoid the kind of mid-season slump that derails a lot of contenders, then suddenly that 9.5 win projection starts to look way too low. And this is where the conversation shifts from can they compete to how far can they go? Because competing is no longer the goal. The expectation, whether people want to admit it or not, is to get back to that stage and finish what they started. The pieces are there, the lessons have been learned, and the hunger after a Super Bowl loss tends to fuel teams in a way that nothing else can. So now I want to bring this back to you one more time before we wrap this up, because this is the part where your voice matters. When you look at everything this team has done, everything they've kept, and everything they've improved, do you believe the Patriots are actually the most dangerous team in the AFC heading into 2026? And if you're still here, that tells me you understand something that a lot of people outside this fan base are still overlooking. This isn't just about talent on paper. This is about a team that has already been tested at the highest level and is coming back more prepared, more complete, and in some areas even more dangerous than before. Because one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is how teams respond after falling short on the biggest stage. Some organizations carry that loss with them in a negative way. It lingers, it creates doubt. But others use it as fuel, and everything we've seen from this Patriots group points toward that second category. There's a clear sense that they know exactly what went wrong, and more importantly, they've taken real steps to correct it. You fix the protection, you reinforce the defense, you keep your core intact, and you trust the growth of your quarterback. That's not guesswork, that's a calculated approach. And when you combine that with the physical identity this team has built, it creates a situation where opponents are going to have to match that intensity every single week. Not every team can do that consistently. And let's not ignore the mental side of it either. A young quarterback like Maye going through a full season, then a playoff run, then experiencing a Super Bowl environment, that kind of exposure accelerates development in a way regular season reps just can't. He's seen the speed, he's felt the pressure, and now he has an entire offseason to process it and come back sharper. That's where you often see the biggest leap, not in raw stats, but in control